Good afternoon everybody, welcome to my train room. If you watched my last video, you'll remember that I said my next major project was to get this area of the layout turned into a finished forest. For that I'm going to need a lot more trees. Since I've just recently built 2 large batches of deciduous trees, I thought I'd have a go at some conifers. So first thing I need is some dowel for the trunks. I have 3 different sizes. I buy 1/8 inch for the small trees, 3/16 for the medium ones, and 1/4 inch for the large. I found the easiest way to cut these dowels is with a knife. Just roll them under the blade and score it all the way around. And once I've got a nice deep score, have to bear with me, it's a little difficult doing it with one hand while I'm holding the camera. Once I've not got a nice deep score, I just snap it. Okay, so I've now cut them all to length. Well, actually, for the most part, they are all double length at the moment because it's a lot easier to handle them. So what I do is leave them as long as possible in double lengths, and then I will only trim them, I'll only cut them in half once they are already painted and ready to turn into trees. So for the next step, let's head out into the garage where I have a belt sander. Okay, here I am in my garage. This is the setup with the belt sander. It's clamped upside down in the bench vise. I don't think OSHA would like this setup, but then I'm modelling a time before they were around, so I can get away with it. Anyway, it's quite a simple matter. Just hold the dowel against the belt sander as it's spinning, turning it slightly so I get it symmetrical all the way around, or at least reasonably symmetrical. It doesn't have to be perfect because real tree trunks aren't perfect. And the belt sander does all the work. So let's get going. Okay, I am back in the train room having shaped all the dowels. Since I used a fairly coarse belt on the belt sander, there is some roughness already, but I need to add a lot more texture because trees are anything but smooth. So I have this old hacksaw blade and I'm just going to scrape it fairly roughly just to add some texture approximating a tree bark. Okay, there's a few seconds for each tree, and it makes a huge difference in the end. Good evening and welcome back. As you can see, I have finished all the tree trunks. They've been roughed up, painted and cut to length. That little pile of dowel you saw earlier made a total of 75 trunks, ranging from 5 to 15 inches tall. Now all I need to do is add the branches and the needles. For the branch structure, I use cut-to-fit furnace filters like this one. It may not look much like branch material at the moment, but once it's pulled apart and painted a more appropriate colour, it starts to look a whole lot better. Anyway, this one filter contains 600 cubic inches of material, which when teased apart should yield about twice that, and that will be more than enough to finish this entire batch. To prepare the furnace filter, I start by tearing off a manageable sized chunk. And now what I need to do is thin it out as much as I can. If you look at a real conifer, you'll see that for the most part, the branch structure is built up in a series of thin canopies. So I'm trying to emulate that. What I'm aiming for is to get the filter material as thin and see-through as I possibly can. So I'm tearing it apart to the point where it barely holds itself together. It'll thicken up a lot when I put the ground foam on, and I still want to be able to see through the finished tree. So what I'm aiming for now is light, lacy and see-through. not worried too much about the overall shape, because if I end up with something scraggly like that, I can just push it back together again and it'll still work. This material is very forgiving and you really can't mess it up at this stage. Well, last night I shredded the entire furnace filter and painted it all dark brown. I've also stuck a load of dowel tree trunks into a series of holes drilled in the block of wood. That will help to hold the trees upright for me while I work on them. Next step is to assemble the trees. Tree assembly is pretty straightforward. I use basic white glue and I just tear out a series of discs and force them down from the top of the trunk. What I'm looking to do is start with a decent sized piece at the bottom and then gradually add smaller and smaller discs until there is very little width left at the top. Slide them down, leave a little gap between them, and we just keep going. I like to have multiple trees on the go at a time. That way, when I find the perfect bottom branch, I just start another tree. Although I don't want to be doing too many, because the glue that wipes off on the top of the dowel will eventually set up. I'd like to get to the top of the tree before that happens. All the little pieces that I tear off at this point do not get wasted. Those will end up getting clumped together and used as small bushes or saplings. So there really is no wastage. I'll put one more disc on here and then I'll look for a piece to make the top with. And there we are. And there's another one. Welcome back. Over the past 3 evenings I have managed to assemble all 75 of the trees, and I still have quite a lot of furnace filter material left over that I will use for some deciduous trees later. Anyway, before I get to adding the ground foam, there is one more step I need to take care of. As you can see, the edges are at this stage quite ragged. Well, a real conifer does have a definite shape to it, as its name would imply. So what I need to do is trim the edges. Doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, a little bit of unevenness is preferred, but if you look at a real conifer, you'll see that the branches tend to stay more or less within the basic cone shape. It's very rare for them to grow much outside of that. So I'm just going to give it a haircut. When I first started making these trees, I was using an old pair of scissors to do this, and I discovered that it was quite difficult. What it needs is sharp scissors, so now I'm using a brand new pair which I keep just for this. There we are. That's just about done, and I'm quite happy with the shape of that. Welcome back. This is my favourite stage of the tree making process. I buy Scenic Express ground foam in the fine textures. I like to buy forest green and conifer green, make the conifers in approximately equal numbers, and then mix the trees indiscriminately. I also sometimes mix the foam together to get an intermediate shade. And I buy cheap sticky hairspray for the glue. Grab a tree, give it a spray, roll it in the ground foam. It gives a fairly dense coating. I like it a little more see-through, so hold it above a bucket, give it a little spin, and let's see what we end up with. There we are, that's more to my liking. The second blast seals it. At the moment it will tend to shed some of the foam, but as the hairspray sets up, that will stick it a little better. If you want a slightly heavier coating, you can just repeat the process. So there's the first roll. If you want it denser than that, spray it again, roll it again, and we have a pretty opaque tree. I'd rather have a little less foam than that, so I'm going to cut some of it off. I do keep a few trees that are denser than others. I like to use the see-through ones at the front and the more densely coated ones at the back. You can see this process goes pretty quickly. Once I finish the batch, I will salvage the foam from the bucket so there's no wastage. Anyway, these trees are now ready for planting. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've also enjoyed it enough to hit the like button. So I will see you again some other time. Bye for now.